Caravela Coffee Talks are back, a space created to speak with thought leaders, to exchange knowledge, and share perspectives.
In these talks, the relationship building team invites you to attend sessions with female leaders in the industry.
We will hear about their aha moments, life lessons, breakthroughs, and how we can make coffee better together.
Over the years, we have seen how the representation of women in the industry has gained traction and has flourished. Join us for some inspiration.
Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Marisabel, Marketing Manager at Caravela.
Hi, I'm Ana Sofia Narvaez, Relationship Builder at Caravela.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Caravela Coffee Talks, Women Make Coffee Better.
In today's episode, you will hear from Holly. She is a co-founder of North Star Coffee Roasters in Leeds, United Kingdom. She wears many hats in the organization, among them green coffee sourcing, managing relationship with farmers, and quality control.
Holly tells us how she started the business with her partner Alex after traveling and working directly with farmers in Kenya, Africa. They saw an opportunity and a gap back then to connect farmers with customers and change this mindset of consumers, coffee consumers, about seeing coffee as just a commodity. Holly highlights the crucial moments in her career and the evolution and growth of North Star Coffee Roasters, always having in mind and having as a mindset that people go over profits.
In this conversation, Holly provides many insights and also lessons learned throughout the years as a company and as a professional. So we hope that you enjoy this conversation.
We are honored to have Holly here from North Star Coffee Roasters in UK. So Holly, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, ladies. I'm Holly. Everyone calls me Holls, and I'm one of the co-owners of North Star, which is a coffee company based here in Leeds in the UK.
Tell us a little bit about your story in coffee, your journey. How did you get here?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I think like a lot of people who work in coffee, we kind of fell into it, and as soon as we'd fallen in, there was no getting out or no leaving coffee. I had grown up, drinking coffee at the age of 9. I lived in Sydney in Australia in sort of early 2000s, so very much when the kind of speciality like barista sort of movement was kicking off, and really fell in love with coffee from a very young age, like age 10, I would say. And then we moved back to the UK in 2003, and there wasn't so much happening by way of great coffee in the UK at that time. So I guess I spent my teenage years kind of being slightly frustrated at this sort of there was really just Starbucks, I'd say, that was kind of like making its way throughout the UK. So it was very much sort of searching for good coffee all the time. Really, that was something I always sought out on travels and things like that. And for my final year research dissertation at university, I decided to look at fair trade coffee farming in Kenya. So I did like a human geography degree and a sort of specialism in sustainable development. And that research took myself and my now husband, Crag, who I co-own North Star with. We met at university in 2009, and we visited Kenya for kind of 3 months together between second and third year, and started to sort of collate qualitative research on the impact of fair trade socially and economically on producing kind of communities in Nyeri in Central Province in Kenya. And that was the first time that we, up until that point, we'd been real avid coffee lovers, but we didn't really have any kind of knowledge of the complexity of the supply chain and how many people were involved, and I guess also like how detached the consumer is from what actually happens, and I think I was there sort of looking at the impact of fair trade, which has its benefits and also maybe some negatives too, and I think it just became clear that the consumer sort of took at face value, if the coffee was certified, it was therefore positively impactful, and they were doing all that they could, I guess, in the supply chain to ensure a fair and equitable way of working for the producer. And obviously during our travels, we kind of became aware that that wasn't always the case, and that there was so many more factors to take into account, you know, that you couldn't necessarily apply a one size fits all, you know, in terms of a sourcing policy and how you would actually go about procuring coffee. So that was the sort of first experience we had, you know, in terms of coffee as a global industry, with the, you know, millions of families that are a part of that supply chain, and also the amazing potential, you know, it held for development and for positive impact if it was restructured, if the system was sort of reworked to really change the kind of balance, I guess, you know, and to make it much more equal and equitable. And yeah, so that's kind of how we came to want to be involved in coffee. That was what really grabbed us. Quite interestingly, we'd never been a barista, you know, we'd never really actually worked with, you know, just avid enjoyers, but not really ever worked behind a machine. So yeah, we kind of opened North Star slightly accidentally, because we just basically, we'd had our eyes open to this. I started my professional career working for Falcon, for an importing company, and sort of trained as a buyer. So had, you know, through that experience was working with lots of roasteries across the UK, and realized that there was no one we could sell that coffee to in Leeds. And it was really just a kind of like, we were looking at the situation thinking, God, Leeds really needs a coffee roastery. It's the third biggest city in the UK. You know, there's the coffee scene is not what it could be, and it actually just needs like a star in the north to really sort of like bring everyone together. And that's actually where we got our name from, of North Star, to just try and build that resource and kind of bring that community together. And that's how the company started. You know, and it was yeah, it's kind of crazy talking about it now, because it was kind of 8 years ago, and like I say, starting with no experience of business, never really having even had the desire to have our own business. Like if there'd been a roastery that we could have worked for, we would have done that, you know. And learning all we had to learn about you know, brewing, and how we were going to speak to wholesale customers and sell them that coffee and give the training and all the extra support that they need. Yeah, it was a crazy learning experience really, but we're here 8 years on and we did it. So yeah, there's a few more of us now, thankfully, which is good.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny how you enter to the coffee industry, you know some things, not everything, and then you go very deep and there's no way back, and then you see so many things you want to do.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
I also think that it's quite interesting, because you were able to understand the dynamics behind the supply chain, you know, and then being able to integrate maybe what the consumers were looking for, where you knew was missing. So having that understanding kind of created a base or a foundation to grow the business.
Yeah,
and also
definitely.
The project that in the end you wanted to develop and grow.
I think that was so key, because I think it's such a complex, wide industry. You know, there's I think you guys were asking in terms of growth and things, and I think very quickly realized that there's going to be constant growing, because you can never kind of just arrive a complete expert in coffee. There's always so much more to it. There's so much to learn. It's ever changing. But I think because of that early experience, we were very aware of what our role needed to be within the supply chain, which was very much to connect consumer to producer. And that, you know, in terms of I guess how we have worked and how we set the company up in terms of, you know, putting that human element back into the supply chain, that was because, you know, we needed to sort of curate long-term relationships, to be involved, to understand as much as we possibly could, to like increase the impact we were able to have with the consumer and actually change people's buying behavior. You know, it was a brand new market that we were selling into in Leeds, in the sense that without that specialty roastery here before, there was very little understanding about, you know, coffee, how good it could taste, how it maybe needed to be sourced in terms of guaranteeing ethical sort of considerations and things. And so, yeah, we really had to, there was no other way we could work, I don't think, you know, to actually achieve that overall mission, which was to grow the demand by connecting the consumer to producer more than ever had been before. And that's kind of we've been lucky in the sense that that's been our mission really from day one. We've been very clear on what we're here to do, to be able to like remain focused, I suppose.
And that leads me to my next question, that you mentioned the humanity element. So we know that North Star's desire and action plan and mission was putting the humanity back on the supply chain, and not only back to the supply chain, but first, humanity first, in the industry. But since you started, how have you been able to stay focused on that and embody and apply it over the years? Sometimes it might be hard, sometimes it might be more challenging. How have you managed to keep clear and focused to your mission?
It's a really good question, because I think sometimes when people say things like this, it's quite easy to think, oh, that's a really nice sentiment, but actually, you know, how does it carry through into everything that you're doing, particularly as you grow and you're faced with other opportunities? And, you know, it can be really challenging at times when you have other priorities happening. But I think, you know, it's been really for us from day one, I think possibly because we came into coffee the way that we did, we had a real kind of rude awakening, I guess, into the situation that we were facing with coffee. And actually, because my role then kind of progressed into working with Falcon, which involved a lot of travel, which was particularly between kind of 2013 and 2015. So when I remember leaf rust was really prevalent across, you know, Latin America, and yields were being really affected. And, you know, that kind of reality was just not necessarily too well communicated, I guess, to the consumer side of the supply chain. Not really, you know, I suppose that's the whole purpose of a commodified supply chain, is that the consumer is blissfully unaware of the reality that's actually happening, you know, within the kind of proportion of people that are super important for the growth and the supply of that coffee. And I think that perspective, I suppose, made it so evident to us that maintaining that approach was not just key to seeing out our mission as a business, but actually, if we wanted our business to survive, you know, if we wanted to build a business that was going to be here for the long term, it goes hand in hand, you know, to work in that way. You can't not and expect to be able to buy those amazing coffees within the next 10 or 20 years if you don't continue prioritizing the human element. The coffee is so kind of so much more than a commodity. It obviously is a commodified crop, and it's very introduction to to the areas that it's grown in, you know, is rooted in colonial systems and systems of really cheap labor, and we're still stuck in that. I think, you know, that's the problem, is that it was just still those kind of, it's just perpetuating, you know, those kind of colonial structures, and with the consumer has been too used to paying too low a price for coffee since the dawn of time, since we've had it, and I think it's just very evident that we need to completely reframe the kind of how we interact with it as a product, as a concept, as a, you know, as being as part of a community. In terms of global health, it's so evident that you can't not continue to sort of try to decommodify the system and put the humanity back into the transaction, really. You know, it's just, we've not kind of come across a situation where we've had to review that. You know, I think we definitely come across challenges with volume requirements or opportunities that come our way that may mean us compromising price or quality, or, you know, those things definitely come into our inbox regularly, but because we know so sort of intensely, I guess, like how important it is that we don't defer from that, because it would only be for short-term gain. You know, it would not give us the longevity that we need in terms of creating a business that we want to build a legacy with. It's become a basis for decision making. You know, it's very easy to understand which opportunities are correct for us, which ones just don't fit with that overall purpose. So it's kind of easier than you think. I think it's actually having that mission from day one has made it really clear, you know, right the way from the first year to the third year to our 8th year, what we say yes to and what just isn't right for us, basically.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's from the start, as you say, from day one, that I strongly believe that strengthens the company when you have a cause and a why very clear and always there throughout all the decisions that we make.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd also like to add that it's kind of been in a way, it's been ahead of the game without maybe really saying we're gonna decommoditize coffee. You know, it's like really having clear your why, like Maddie said, and in the process realizing that by putting humanity back, you are changing the game. For the producers, for the people you're working with, and ultimately for the consumers that have the opportunity to taste the coffee. And the more we do it, the better it is. This doesn't mean that it's easy, right? And you just mentioned it, but it was like starting that movement, I will say, you know, like 8 years ago, being part of that movement of decommoditizing coffee, and making it grow or expand, or, you know, other people, making other businesses interested about this way of working, instead of just seeing coffee like another crop that you can buy and sell.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think, yeah, sorry to spend too long on this question, but it's a really good point in that before, you know, I think the idea to the consumer that we needed a more sustainable way of sourcing coffee, people had just started to acknowledge that the concept of sustainability and those, you know, the expectations they had on businesses to work sustainably, and, you know, understanding that definition. And I think what happened was we kind of came into it and say, well, actually, we can't sustain a system that isn't currently working. You know, there's no point working to be sustainable when the system doesn't currently work or benefit, you know, the people that are a part of it. So actually, we need to look at beyond sustaining and more to regenerating, so reworking the system and kind of undoing that system so that it's you know, yeah, so that it's completely we start from scratch instead of actually improve and build upon it and stuff. That's where we're at, you know. And I think that it's challenging to explain that to customers, that potentially some of the behaviors they were exhibiting, thinking that was enough, is nowhere near enough, you know. And actually it's about, like, yeah, starting from scratch in terms of understanding that definition. Yeah,
and that's the real differentiator.
For sure.
Do things differently.
Yeah.
Holly, and what has been this biggest aha moment that you have faced in the process? Like that moment, that the turnaround point that has enlightened you in the process?
Yeah, there's been a few. So I think it kind of that we had the aha moment, I suppose, before we started the company, in terms of, oh, coffee doesn't work, you know, we need oh wow, we didn't realize that, you know, and this is what we need to do. So that's probably, you know, taking it way back, was an early one. I think for me as a person, and in term, I guess, speaking from the perspective of leading the business to where we've kind of got today, like, I think, you know, we started the business when I was 22. So, you know, there's been a lot of personal growth, you know, that I've had to go on to actually become equipped, I suppose, as a human being to be able to face some of those challenges. And I think when I started in coffee, like coming back to the kind of concept of women in coffee, for my first like 3 or 4 years working in coffee, I was very regularly the only woman, you know, at a meeting, round a table, on an origin trip, you know, at a client meeting, whatever that might have been. And I think, yeah, that was a bit of an aha moment, in like, oh, this, maybe we need to make it a bit more inclusive, and you know, that the industry could become a bit more approachable to women coming into it. So yeah, I think for me personally, a great moment was in kind of attaining Q grader certification, just because I'd been on this sort of journey of really being thrown in at the deep end. You know, I kind of had a very atypical experience in terms of coming into coffee and being trained. It was very much a kind of, there's a requirement, we need you to do this, you can do it, go for it, which was so incredible, and I honestly wouldn't change it for the world, because it really progressed my kind of journey in coffee. But it equally, it can create a situation where there's maybe some more self-doubt. You know, you kind of need that kind of confirmation that you do know what you're doing, that, you know, just because you maybe didn't formally learn something, that you can actually, you know, that you can do it. And I think, you know, being a Q grader is not the be all and end all, but I think that was a real moment of personal success where I kind of realized, yeah, that it wasn't just a fluke, that I could, you know, that I could understand coffee and sort of work with it in that way. And I think probably the biggest one we've had recently has been in the past 18 months when the pandemic hit. We had a massive aha moment of just being reminded of what we are here for as a business. I think, you know, as much as I've talked about having a really strong mission and a clear purpose from day one, you know, the past 8 years has been really very kind of heads down, like responding to opportunities, growing the team, becoming, you know, not qualified, but experienced in HR, in marketing, in, you know, all of those things that you have to do as a business owner, as a small business owner. And it had maybe got to the point before the pandemic where we were becoming kind of I guess disillusioned maybe with where we were at as an industry. There wasn't a lot of progression or positive change, or, you know, and we were sort of maybe struggling to understand our role and kind of, you know, how we could move forwards with the mission and what we were here to do. And I think the pandemic really, when it first hit, it was terrifying, but it also gave us that moment of clarity and reflection, you know, to actually really come back to what we're here for, what we can do, and what we need to put in place to ensure we can, you know, achieve what we need to in the next few years. So yeah, those are my aha moments, I guess.
Well, I like to add here and comment on, I think the lockdown has been so challenging for everyone, I mean, for the humanity as a whole, right? But depending on your business or what you're doing, it kind of impacted differently. I have a question. Now that, you know, we are in a way a bit past COVID, because COVID is here and it's not leaving. We just learn how to live with it. How do you feel about, you know, like if you compare like that moment with what you're doing now, and how maybe your customers and the team has adapted and reacted? Because I think that's key. It's not just yes, you lead as a business owner, but then you have a whole team with you to support and to support you and you to support. So maybe can you share a bit about that experience? Because I think it's key. It requires a lot of resilience and a lot of thought and analyzing too.
100%. Yeah, I think like the pandemic has been such a strange experience in that, you know, commercially, I think it flipped from potentially us thinking it would be a disastrous year to actually our best ever. We had a crazy good experience of, you know, particularly growth in online. It mimics lots of roasteries. They experience the same thing, this huge uptake of at-home coffee consumption. And I think the knock-on impact that had on the team, you know, we went from, like, we've always been a really small, tightly knit team, and the people that join us tend to stay with it. We don't have a huge sort of turnover. Like, we've had Ollie, who you guys know, who's been with us since, you know, well, for 6 years, you know, James has been with us for 4 years. Like, you know, it's been a really, really sort of tight knit team, but very small. And, you know, it kind of completely changed the requirements of the team. Like, we suddenly needed to be able to become better with our marketing. Because it was so crucial that, you know, we were selling coffee and making our way through some of our forward reservations and contracts and making sure we were still having beans going through the roaster. So it was much, and then operationally, the dispatch team, you know, which was essentially 2 people, and that we could kind of get everything dispatched, because it was mostly wholesale, so just very simple kilo bags out the door, to changing to, you know, home customers who may order 5 250-gram packs, 1 ground for French press, 1 for, you know, AeroPress, 1 beans, so labor intensive. And so it really changed the requirements that we needed, you know, from a personnel perspective, from a resource perspective. It's completely changed the future of our business. Like we've really understood the importance of our online community, not just in you know, kind of safeguarding us against wholesale losses, but also with the increased potential we have to deliver our core message directly to the consumer. You know, we're reaching a much more engaged customer base as a result of being able to speak to people directly, get across our messaging, really educate consumers on the problem, you know, how their role kind of what their role is in resolving it. So we've kind of now got this area of the business which has become a priority, you know, to really sort of ensure we're taken care of, and it's a whole other beast in itself, I suppose. And I think, you know, the downside of the pandemic, emotionally and mentally, it's been super taxing on everybody. And I think our approach was to essentially just really kind of belt in with our team, both in our coffee shop and in the roastery, to really ensure that they understood we were here for them, even if they were not working, that they were kept, you know, updated with the state of the business, with what was happening, with when we thought we could bring them back to work. All of those things were so crucial, that kind of communication. And it was really hard at times because there were certain answers we just didn't have. You know, the leadership of our government in the UK has been a little bit questionable, I would say. And, you know, it's been really difficult to as a business owner, to understand what we need to be doing legally, what we should be doing morally, how we should be looking after everybody, and the kind of balance of those things. But yeah, it's absolutely kind of revolutionized the sort of future of the business, in the sense of the systems that we have in place for our sales, but also our people, I think, you know, and the kind of support and the HR approach, and just the importance of having that kind of engaged team all the time, because the support that you are able to offer one another is like so crucial when crisis hits, you know, like it did.
Thank you for sharing, because I think it challenged coffee businesses beyond what we were talking first, like sustainability and ethically sourcing coffee, but now how do we adapt and become stronger as a company so that we can keep doing, you know, what we love doing, and keep, you know, focus on our mission and vision despite the challenges that we're facing. So it's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing. So on that note, and, you know, growth and women and participation and leading the business, and, you know, taking risk and adapting. I wanted to ask, you know, women and youth are key to the coffee industry. So what is your take on that? How do you think, or, you know, how does North Star approach that? How do you think, as coffee industry, we can invest more in women and young people?
I mean, firstly, it's hard to emphasize how integral we see those groups being to the future of coffee. You know, I think it can't be emphasized enough, you know, in terms of like it's so evident the future of the industry is reliant upon them. You know, like the issue with people moving out of coffee, youth moving out of cities. We're legitimately at a point where there may not be enough pickers, enough people farming coffee to meet demand, and it's such a huge concern. And actually, I feel like the situation gets worse when we visit, you know, when we were able to do producer visits and having these sorts of interactions. And obviously the work we've been doing with, like we were just speaking with Maria, who, you know, whose coffee would buy with you guys in El Salvador, like, and that's one of her biggest, you know, challenges, as it is many producers in that area, to actually just ensure there are enough young people who are capable of doing the work. And it comes back to the issue that coffee is just not attractive, you know, as an industry to sort of be within for a young person who's faced with the bright lights of the city and a more guaranteed income, or, you know, it's something that's so it's a disaster, really, I think, you know, for the industry, in the same way that we look at climate change and, you know, the strain on Arabica and I think it's up there with one of the most serious issues in the industry, and therefore companies need to be doing so much more to ensure that youth and female empowerment is much more prevalent within the supply chain. It's really tough to know what the answer is, because we need to first of all, I guess, define what makes coffee attractive for producers to stay within. So what is it? Is it economic security? Is it kind of social interaction and sort of more value that they get, as being part of the supply chain? Is it being able to stay within the rural areas, which is, beautiful? And is it improved quality of life? Is it, what are those things that we need to understand, what the problem is, I guess, to be able to really fix it, and to not make any assumptions, that we actually just can't, we don't even know if that's the case. I think, as part of our sourcing approach, we are always eager to ensure we're prioritizing those groups where we can. So, either through purchases, like obviously we wanted to work with Maria in El Salvador, we kind of could highlight her both because of her coffee, but also because of the fact she was a woman, because she was being detached slightly from what she could make from her income with coffee because of a lack of equipment. And that was it was a basis for the decision making, I guess. But also through initiatives that we support, through other sort of supply chains that we have in place, particularly with Vava Angwenyi that heads up Vava Coffees in Kenya, another B Corp exporter, who we've worked with for kind of 3 years now with the supply of our Kenyan and Tanzanian coffee. And through the purchase of that coffee, we support her initiative called Gente del Futuro, which is, people of the future, young people of the future, that benefit from being a part of that program through coffee scholarships that we either put that we support financially, but also we've helped deliver some of the skill share, so running sensory workshops and opening up the supply chain to those young people, so to the children of coffee farmers, or to maybe people who have no coffee background, but just making sure that they have an understanding of the opportunities within the industry that go beyond just being a producer or just being a picker, actually sort of this is what a buyer is looking for, this is what your coffee tastes like in comparison to coffee from Brazil or from Sumatra, to being able to just showcase the value of what they're growing, the how they could potentially a bit like you guys do with the Pekka program, like how could they manipulate certain variables that are within their control on the farm to access more of that supply chain, to access more value for their coffee. We try to do, that's a real focus of the business in terms of the support that we aim to deliver. We focus on 3 areas, which is climate change resilience, youth and female empowerment, and those are the things that we constantly prioritize within every relationship. We're always looking for how we can better that, because we acknowledge how important it is. I'm not going to say we understand exactly how to, and we're just in the very early stages of starting to understand the success of that support, and to understand what we're achieving or what we're helping to achieve through delivering those projects or partnering up with those projects. But I think it's something that needs to be much more of a consideration within coffee, for sure.
Thank you. I agree with you, and it caught my attention when you said to really understand the context, because sometimes we have good intentions, we want to support coffee communities, but we don't know how. Or we think we know how. Sometimes the answer is prices. Sometimes the answer is more access to education. So that capacity building, or sharing, like you said, perspective on the market, or allowing youth to see beyond the farm, because maybe they won't necessarily be happy at the farm, but they can add value in other part of the supply chain. And we're happy to see that. In at least like in Caravela, we have a lot of sons of and daughters of coffee growers. So there is, like a space for them as well in other parts of the supply chain, or maybe, working towards internal consumption. It depends, but I think it's key that we really understand what can we do that really creates that impact, and work with origin partners, I think, as well, that have more understanding of the social context and or even economic context, because sometimes it's not coffee the answer, you know, coffee has nothing to do with it, and it's more like a political thing or just social thing in the area. So having that understanding really creates and kind of makes you scale these opportunities and these projects that as a roaster you want to implement or start implementing.
Absolutely.
I have another question, you know, because we have talked about your growth as a woman in the coffee industry, as a professional, as a business owner, but also this growth has come as a company in general. Since you started the business, you know, with this idea of what was not working, and now establishing the roastery, then the coffee shop, and now a coffee academy. How have you been able, you know, to unlock this growth? How do you were able to realize, okay, this is our next step, and in the process, always kind of putting people over profits? Because I understand this has been key to not only to your growth, but to you and as a business. It's part of your core identity, I will say. So maybe you can share how has this been for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think the easiest way to answer that question is to sort of clarify that, you know, when Crag and I started the business, we'd never done any business training. We'd not done a business degree. We had no investor. We managed to self-fund start the business on, you know, very minimal funds. And we therefore had no external pressure or concept of what business was, I guess. You know, the only basis that we had for growing the business was what we felt passionate about, what we wanted to be putting our time and effort into, and you know, what we felt would help us achieve that mission of changing the supply chain, or, you know, making positive impact. So when we had those sorts of considerations in place, you know, it became very evident what we needed to do at each point. I think the thing that we established really, really early on, and Crag and I are just very, very aligned in our outlook on life, you know, as you'd hopefully imagine, like with us working together and being married, and, you know, as close as we are, is that you know, we would not consider North Star a success unless we had a happy team, you know, happy producers and happy customers. Like, those were the three things that, as long as we're in charge of this business, like we can never put at risk or compromise, because as soon as we do, it's not working, you know, like it was as clear as that. So it's why we've grown the way that we have, you know, which has been very, very organically. I think we were super fortunate being the first roastery in Leeds. We had, you know, a lot of natural interest in what we were doing. It doesn't mean it was easy. We had to work probably harder than many roasteries that set up, you know, in an established market, because we didn't have, you know, that our customer base needed converting. Like, we needed to explain to people they needed to pay more for their coffee, for their equipment, for their training. It was a really hard sell. You know, when we set up, we were asking for more and more and more from the customer. But we somehow managed to, you know, to get that across, I guess. And I think bit by bit we grew. You know, we started supplying more wholesale customers. We had this thing where Crag sort of paid himself in the first year by the number of kilos per week he roasted, you know. So that was like such a motivator, because there were points where he was earning £10 a week or £20 a week, you know, and then like, and that's how we did it. And this is why, while I was working at Falcon, like, so it was very much of a kind of a support system in place. But yeah, it was really a real motivating factor. And I think when we kind of got to 4 years into operating in that way, where we were essentially just kind of supplying wholesale, you know, and growing that side of things, it was going super well, but we were still, I guess we were kind of aware of the limit we would reach if we were to just remain a wholesale supplier, in terms of coming back to our mission, which was to connect consumer to producer. We knew we needed to maybe take a bit more control over that process, you know, and that's why when the coffee shop opportunity came up, the way we were able to look at that was kind of like, well, what will this contribute towards by way of our mission and reason for being here? And it was very evident looking at that opportunity that it would give us that shop window into showing people what a roastery was, understanding the supply chain more, giving them that experience where they could really drink a cup of coffee and know all of the steps that had happened before it, because we were in charge of delivering that, you know, experience to the end consumer. We could control the way our team in the coffee shop delivered it, the training they had. So yeah, I think that's the way that we've grown has sort of supported you know, the approach that we take with people, because we've never pushed ourselves beyond our limits. We've never been answerable to, you know, anyone else who maybe had different priorities or intentions. You know, we've been able to acknowledge that this for us is a slow burner, as in we're more than happy to take our time, and as long as we're not compromising along the way. And I think it's become evident even more so in the last year how integral to the future of our business are our people. You know, we can't leave it, we can't kind of neglect that side of the business, that function of the business. And I think it will determine even more now as we grow, like how the opportunities that we have, that we consider, which are coming, you know, more frequently than they ever have before, because of the stage of business that we're at. We're more visible to opportunities and things. So yeah, I think it's just it's coming back to just personal integrity, I guess, you know, and kind of really clearly thinking, yeah, of course we want to grow a healthy business and we want there to be growth and it to be exciting, but if we kind of have all of that happen too quickly, or, you know, in a way that's gonna kind of yeah, like put people's experience of working with us at risk, or turn it into something that we don't want it to be, then it's just not the right thing for us to do.
I think at the end, that's like, and in moments of crisis and in moments like in this ups and downs, you realize how important people is. In Caravela, before I started working here a couple of years ago, there was a campaign that our best coffees are people. It's literally like,
absolutely, yeah,
like the people is the base to all the good things that a company can do and deliver, and product services and all. So people,
for sure,
especially when we are speaking like large scale, you know, if workers aren't happy, or, you know, if we don't have the same mission, then the same understanding, you know, because everyone adds value in different ways. So it's what are we doing? Are we really you know, contributing to this cause? Because at the end, it's kind of that when we go to work every day, when we deliver the product, serve our customers, it's like, it's every day, not just one day of the year. And that's why people are fundamental, and just, you know, it's human capital, you know.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Holly, I wanted to, you know, to ask another question, but it's very inspiring for me, because you know, you said you didn't have like a coffee background per se, or you didn't start as a barista, but you started in a different part of the supply chain, learning about logistics, sourcing coffee. So through these roles that you have had along the years and inside the company as well, right? What are some of the 3 or maybe 2 things that you have learned that were fundamental to building your career, but also North Star in the process? Or maybe establishing a relationship with farmers. I think it's a broad question, but
I'll try and answer it concisely. I do understand what you mean. I think it's it's a really nice question, because it and like in preparing to answer it, it kind of makes me think of lots of different lessons that I've learned along the way. I think the first one, which kind of goes towards how we run our wholesale relationships, but also with our producer relationships, is to never over promise and under deliver. I think we kind of aim to under promise and over deliver, if that makes sense. That's kind of like the approach we've always taken. And I think it's been intentional, both in terms of our own humility, I suppose, where we've kind of been, that it's been really tempting after a producer visit, or kind of where you found this amazing person you want to work with, to be able to say, yeah, we'll buy all of your production, we want to have, we want to do this and this, and then to be sat there thinking, oh my, we can't sell this coffee, and what good have we done? We've never been in that situation, partly maybe because of my background and seeing where that goes wrong, in terms of being left overstocked with coffee with other companies and things. So we've always kind of taken that approach, but I always think it also gives us a great platform to then, prove our worth, in terms as a supplier and a customer. So as a customer to our producing partners and a supplier to our wholesale network, I think it's really important. You also, I've learned how crucial relationships are. I feel like we have a relationship that goes beyond a working relationship with our suppliers and customers, I would say, which I think is, given that this whole supply chain is based on connected, people connected from places that are often far away, lots of distance, there's lots of trust involved. And it's only when you connect with someone on a human level, I think, in terms of sharing that experience, or taking a bit more of an engaged approach to their life and their situation, that really starts to kind of become very effective, I guess. I think always being I think I was going to say always be kind, and I felt myself feeling a bit shy about saying that, partly because I've taken that approach in the past, and it's easy for people to say, well, that's not realistic, and business isn't kind, and like you have to, if you're a business owner, you have to be X, Y, and Z. And I think actually I'm going to stick by that, because I really believe in just being kind and being respectful and maintaining your personal integrity, going above and beyond for people when they need it, like showing up when they need you to. It, like in the case of the pandemic, the last 18 months, like there were instances where we were massively out of our comfort zone in the support that we maybe had to offer some of our producing partners to just help them through a harvest, or step up when they were being hit with curfews and PPE expense, and loans were being pulled back, and it felt risky to sort of stand up and say, well, here's some money, because you need it right now, and we can do that. But we did it, and it's kind of I think you can't positively impact unless you're in a situation of discomfort. I think if you feel comfortable with your impact, you're likely trying to exercise control and maintain a power balance. I think, to kind of really rethink empowerment and support. It's about decolonizing that, and flipping this sort of situation to ensure that you are actually impacting. And I think, real and true impact comes from when you're in a point where maybe it feels a bit uncomfortable, or it takes you out of, the usual way of working. I think that's what needs to happen. So I think being kind and respectful, always feeding back, like never wasting people's time. It's been challenging for us as a roastery that only up until May we only had 5 employees in the roastery. We're now 10, actually. We've doubled really quickly, but so important to kind of be fair and truthful with what we're able to do as a team. If we're not going to be able to turn around the samples you send within the week that you need us to, we'll say we're not going to kind of put the producer or the exporter to the expense of sending samples if we can't deliver the feedback. We understand how frustrating that is and stuff. So I think there's so many things like that we've always kind of done, but I guess made a point of maintaining as we've grown, and it's meant that the relationships that we have now are so mutual. They're built on mutual respect. We've hopefully built up that belief that we'll deliver, and that we'll kind of keep up our side of the bargain, and if we run into a situation like a pandemic, we'll do our best to help. We have controls in place like any business, but we also have the human element of knowing when to just be a human being, basically, I think.
Amazing.
Powerful
And
words.
empathetic, like understanding the context of every person, and being empathetic and being kind, but understanding their context and not believing that everyone lives the same context as you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I have, moving a bit more and kind of towards the closing.
Yeah.
I have one last question. How do you believe, that maybe coffee companies can continue supporting the next generation of women leaders in the coffee industry?
I think first and foremost, maybe, I mean, things like this organized by you guys is amazing and so nice to be asked to be a part of it. I think showcasing, female leadership is probably a great place to start, maybe doing that slightly more frequently, ensuring that when women succeed in coffee, that's shared, and that we can all share in other women's success, because with the industry being the way that it is, that it's automatically a really amazing thing, and it's something that needs to be communicated more widely, I think, and really, really held up. I think, workplaces potentially could become slightly more female focused in terms of, making it a bit more childcare friendly, sort of making that situation a bit more realistic for women, to ensure that they're able to do everything that they may want to do, making it more inclusive, the actual environment and the kind of policies, and it's even just things like, I know of so many women who've been pregnant within their roles and kind of genuinely concerned about being around coffee in a roastery and the caffeine and all of those sorts of things, and there's definitely a consideration, but it's something that's so crucial to resolve, because the benefit of keeping those women within the business and within the role, it far outweighs any kind of changes that need to be made in the short term. I think sharing best practice, maybe mentoring, kind of creating a support network, for challenges that are being faced, which are going to differ from country to country and region to region and individual to individual. I think we've had, I guess, coming from a fairly privileged position, here in the UK as a white woman, like my kind of life story is very different to lots of women within coffee, and I think acknowledging that privilege and position and being kind of more open to helping and mentoring and giving some time to just being available, I suppose, for women who don't have the same privilege, I think is really, really crucial. Providing a checklist, in terms of helping women become the best leaders. Like we've got, I've been able to access incredible mentors and a support network, here in the UK, and I think sharing that more widely, and whether it's personal or professional growth, I think it's a crucial part of any working professional, but particularly for women in a field that's mostly male dominated is very, very crucial. So I hope to see more of those sorts of things going forwards. I think it's naturally showing up more at industry events and women produce coffees, and but actually it's kind of looking at those supply chains and understanding how those women can access more value from them, and making sure their position is being kind of encouraged and developed, rather than just buying a female produced coffee. It's like, well, actually ensure what is that female achieving from your relationship, what's she getting out of it, how, what does her future growth look like, what's her career progression look like, and really looking at things in the same way that you would do for yourself.
Have you seen like an increase in participation of women in the coffee industry since you entered? Like before, you mentioned how you went to origin visits and it was just you as female. Have you seen this evolve a little bit?
Yes, I think I know I think when you're a woman working in coffee, you tend to make friends with other women working in coffee. So lots of the women you mentioned who are going to be a part of this series, I class as like friends, and I'm really, really privileged to have known and worked with them. And I think Yes, there's been an increased incidence of women coming into the industry. I think maybe on the barista side of things, it's still heavily weighted, to be male dominated, but there's been loads of really great initiatives that have kind of become established in the last couple of years, to just provide that platform for women to become involved and like showcase there are female baristas, and that you don't have to have facial hair and tattoos, to participate in that part of the industry, that it's much more inclusive. And I think that's hopefully something that will only increase with more female competitors, in the competitions and at the industry events and things. I think that's something that there's much more it's maybe more normal, it's more normalized, to have females in that kind of arena of coffee. I think on the buying side, and to be honest, just in terms of like my geographical location here in the UK, we're surrounded by some bigger roasteries that tend to actually have all female buying teams, which is amazing. I'm not sure exactly how it is for the rest of the country, whether that's representative of the picture. They're great cuppers, they're really great at their job, and I think we're really uniquely located in that regard. I think it's something that hopefully we'll see lots more of. I know really up until June, really, like it was myself as a woman in our own business, so we've now got 2 more in the team, which feels like a relief. Just after 6 years of just working with mostly Crag and Ollie, and then James joined, and then Marcus, and so, who are all lovely men. They're the best men, they're the best men you could wish to work alongside. But it's really nice to have just a bit more of a balanced representation within our own business. But we've had to acknowledge our role in that, in terms of making ourselves more available to women, and more encouraging of women entering coffee.
Yes.
Awesome. When we were doing this research and reaching out to women in coffee, we were able to see there are so many women, like more than we tend to think, that are behind. Of course, we had always talked about women, at least from the production side, being like really involved in like supporting their husbands in the houses, or the drying, because women are more careful. That's kind of the belief, right? But I think Marisabel and I have been lucky enough to see a lot of women in different positions, like directors, executives, running a dry mill, or head of quality, and leading big teams, or just being able to meet producers. And then through our work at Caravela, also being able to meet people like you, roasters, business owners, coppers, green coffee buyers that are women. So I think just the fact that you get to know that there are women who have these jobs kind of unlocks that mindset, or that thinking that, I can do this, I might do this. Like I can host this possibility in my mind, and if this is something that I as a woman want to pursue, then I can look at people who are doing great things and learn something. So I think having that role model, either if you know that you are a role model or not, it's so important. For women in coffee, and for women in general.
100%, definitely. No, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity, and I'm really pleased to be a part of it, and I can't wait to see the interviews from the other participants as well.
Thank you very much for your time, and I think also thank you for what you do as a business. Like I mentioned, it's good to see women leading, but also just seeing great business doing great things, and working as a force of good in general. So that is inspiring, because it goes beyond just being women, but really adding value at all levels.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we couldn't do it without you guys. So really pleased to be a part of your network. And we're looking forward to accelerating what we've already done as well.
Thank you.
Amazing.
So
Thank you so much, guys.
Take
care. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching Caravela Coffee Talks.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode and this conversation and also got inspired.
And stay tuned for next episodes coming up in the next few weeks.
We will continue featuring incredible women that are doing great contributions to the supply chain.
Indeed, and to the coffee industry. And if you missed any of our earlier episodes, which were also with incredible women, we invite you to check them out. We have them all available in all podcast platforms, as well as in our YouTube channel.
See you next week.